Big weekend ahead of the Padres and all the other clubs hunting for postseason spots in that National League wild card race. Coming off a split in Seattle, up and down week, back to San Francisco, and high stakes series everywhere you look, Derek Togerson, and that's kind of how we like it this time of year. Although a little bit more of a cushion, like we kind of felt a couple weeks ago, might be preferable, but things have tightened up. So a fun race, exciting, stressful few weeks might be ahead. This is the On Fire podcast brought to you by NBC 7. He is Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp. Derek spent the day in Aztec land, Snapdragon Stadium. Big day, Conference of Champions. Let's go.
Okay, Conference and champion in name, if not in participants. It does. The Pac-12 does have a big history. It's about to start a brand new history. It's the San Diego State last year was trying to supplement the Pac-12. Now they're being asked to resurrect it. So congratulations to the Aztecs. Should be very beneficial in the next couple of years to see them joining. Well, maybe Cal and Stanford come back. Who the heck knows? But, it's exciting times for San Diego State because we know what the Mountain West is and how difficult it is to get any kind of national recognition.
Yeah.
We don't know what the new Pac-12 is going to look like. So maybe a journey into the unknown, a little bit of excitement for Aztec Nation is necessary here.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm excited about it, and we'll see how things look once July 1st, 2026 rolls around. But I think there's a reason for optimism, certainly. All right, we got important matters to discuss on the Padres front. Thanks to OG's, the sponsor of the On Friar podcast. If you want to watch college football Saturdays, Aztecs on the road this weekend, NFL games on Sundays or Mondays or Thursday night, even Bills Jets week 2 Thursday night this evening. Of course, your Padres. Go to OG's, one of their many locations across San Diego County. Tons of TVs, a great menu that they're constantly updating, and an awesome beer list. So thanks to OG's for all they do for the On Fire podcast and for the NBC 7 Sports Wrap team. Without further ado, the walk-up music. Great to be with you. It is the On Friar podcast. He is Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp. Off day Thursday for the Padres after a brief Vetter Cup split in Seattle. Now on to San Francisco for another series against the Giants. The last one didn't go quite as well as we had hoped, and the Padres spinning their wheels a little bit, been playing 500 ball now for a few weeks, and the Mets have not. And so that's why suddenly you're looking at 4 teams for 3 spots, and it's a little bit of anybody's game. And so we'll discuss that. Shout out to Lauren in the chat right out of the gates. Good to see you guys on the air again. It is good to be with you. It is good to be with our old friend Rafa as well, who I know Rafa, diehard Bay Area sports fan, feeling good about Bob Melvin's crew, even if it just means playing spoiler last weekend and this weekend. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, Bob Melvin, the rivalry was last year, struggling at the end of the year to get to 500.
Yeah, how you like that, Rafa? How you like being on this side of the Bob Melvin experience? I still have a tough time wrapping my head around all that. But Derek, how should we be feeling as we sit here on an off day? We can go through the schedule for every team. I mean, it is like critical series after critical series. Give me your kind of
7 with the Phillies in the next week and a half. That's
some challenges ahead.
Yes.
But how should we be feeling going in this weekend?
Well, you're in control of the playoff spot right now, right? You feel good. Feel really good. Yu Darvish came back and is clicking. Joe Musgrove looks like he's back. Fernando Tatis Jr. looks like he's back, or at least on very close to rounding back into shape. Manny Machado was doing Manny Machado things. Good. Feel good because you don't need help from anybody else. I hate it when people say you control your destiny, because destiny by definition cannot be controlled. What you do control is whether or not you're going to get in the playoffs. And all you have to do is win. Go Al Davis. Just win, baby. You win enough games right now. You don't need anybody else to lose anything else. You can go and put yourself in the postseason. And with 18 games left, that's a damn good place to be.
It is. It is. I don't know if I'm as comfortable and cozy as you appear to be. As we sit
Oh no,
here
not
now.
comfortable and cozy. Oh no, I'm freaking out on the inside. I'm
Okay,
freaking,
because
but on
look,
the outside, look, hey, you could be in a lot worse situation. You could be right now. You could be the Braves. You could be the
yeah,
Braves who need other teams to lose to get you in. That's what you
that's
don't
true.
want to be. So right now we're better than. Let me see, the Braves, Cubs, Cardinals, Giants, Reds, Pirates, Nationals, Rockies, and Marlins. You're better off than them. Roll with it.
Yeah, yeah, that is certainly true. And I think, from the standpoint of, the Braves, they haven't quite been as red hot as the Mets have, certainly have done enough to kind of hang in there, and make it a 14 race. But what happens with a club like that that's just been, struck with so many injuries through the course of the season? Can they keep it up? They've got the Dodgers. They've got 4 in a row, a wraparound series starting Friday against the Dodgers. And
Mhm.
so, a rare situation, I've seen some Twitter chatter where all Padres fans are pulling for the Dodgers. Now, if
Kind of
look,
wild, right? Like
if,
this is the world we live in now.
yeah, and that's a playoff race, and that's what makes it exciting and interesting. Now, if you could somehow know going into it that the Padres are going to sweep the Giants and feel good about what they do, then you think, hey, if the Braves can take a couple from the Dodgers and maybe tighten things up in the division a little bit, and you got 3 more left. Again, bit of a pipe dream. But I think just in terms of kind of like what gives you the most security is if the Dodgers can go and take care of business, they're at home against the Braves. Then that would make you feel a lot more comfortable. Again, provided that the Padres do play well against the Giants. And I think there were from was it July 20th to August 20th? I might have that. No, it'd have to be more than that. I looked at some stretch of games. No, yeah, it was July 20th through August 20th. The Padres were 22-5,
Mhm.
playing lights out baseball. Since August 20th, you're looking at about a 500 baseball team. And that's what's allowed the Mets, who I think have won 11 of 13 or something like that, to kind of get back into it. And so this time of year seems to favor the hot team, the team with the momentum. We know about that in 2021. We know about that when things clicked around this time of year. It was basically this weekend in 2022. They lose the opener in Arizona on that Thursday night game. Bob Melvin rips into his guys, and then they just go nuts the rest of that weekend and then on straight through to the NLCS. I think what gives me a little bit pause is, the Padres have just kind of been spinning their wheels a little bit. We've seen Robert Suarez struggle. We've seen, Joe Musgrove went from throwing a perfect game to getting shelled on Sunday. Dylan Cease, little like a moment like Jake Cronenworth in the 3rd inning, that can be costly. And so we saw the exciting ride with the walk-offs and Jackson Merrill and Manny Machado with his home run chase. Shout out to him, franchise's all-time home run leader. But now just kind of the way they've played has made me a little shaky now going into the stretch.
You're not going to stay. We talked about this though, Darnay. You're not going to stay that hot the whole time, not down the
Sure.
stretch. What you're going to do is you're going to hit a little bit of a lull, which is what they've now hit against some pretty good baseball teams. The Giants are always a thorn in their side for whatever reason. The Mariners are always going to play them tough. That's just what they do. Congratulations to Seattle for winning the Vetter Cup this year. They've won it more often than the Padres have. I don't know why that is, but the folks who share the Peoria Sports Complex, those matchups tend to favor Seattle for whatever reason. So you got a couple of whatever. Again, I don't know why, but interesting matchups. But they play well against really good teams. 15 games over 500 against teams who are over 500. And they got Houston coming to town. And then it's their turn to sweep the White Sox. So you're going to see over the next week and a half or so, things will, even themselves back out. And then the Padres, I think, will probably rise back up again as they go into the final 2 weeks of the season with their final homestand and then the final road trip of 3 in LA and 3 in Arizona. I don't really see a scenario where they don't clinch a playoff spot and don't go to the wild card round. It feels like it's almost preordained at this point because they have been playing such good baseball. I just don't see him falling off a cliff. Same thing I said about the Dodgers not winning the division. They're going to win the division because they can't fall that far down. I don't see the Padres falling that far down that they are going to play themselves out of postseason contention here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And some of those teams like the Cubs and the Giants, I mean, they'd kind of tailed off long before. It's those four teams that are all within, what is it now, like 3.5, 4 games of one another here on Thursday afternoon. 3 games of one another. Braves 1 game back of the Mets, who are a game and a half back of the Padres. And so you're also looking at playoff positioning as well, which kind of factors into some of these series. Like Mets going to Philly this weekend, obviously a challenge for the Mets, and Philly, all of a sudden they're a game up on the Dodgers for the top seed in the National League period. And so, we're not looking at one of these, last couple weeks of the season that we've seen in the past where like a team like the Dodgers, like, okay, they're going to be the number 1 seed. Like that's pretty well settled. They've got something to play for. The Phillies have something to play for, not just a division, but taking the top seed and potentially home field throughout, the National League playoffs. Dodgers, of course, in a similar situation, facing the Braves. And so how that all factors in, and of course the Diamondbacks as well, they've got a bunch of games against the Brewers, another quality, playoff type team. And so really curious just to see like how things look when we get out of this weekend. And, I feel like oftentimes there's always like, okay, this weekend could really determine kind of how things go and potentially, but you could also see like a lot of these series kind of ending up in splits, and we're kind of in the same spot that we are now, but Monday or Tuesday, where everybody's still lumped together within like 3 or 4 games, and we'll see what happens from there. It's just kind of about avoiding that doomsday type of weekend for the Padres, or in their favor, like going on a run here against the Giants, hoping that the Dodgers take care of business against the Braves, and all of a sudden you feel really good about your chances with, a couple weeks left in the season.
Yeah, and also, by the way, the Diamondbacks are playing the Brewers this weekend.
Yep.
So the Brewers are running away with the Central. It looks like right now they are again 80. They're only a game better than the Padres, right? But they're well ahead in the Central Division. They are trying to secure that division and that number 3 seed, so they can know they're hosting the first round of the wild card against the number 6 seed. And they've been playing, I think, over their heads for a lot of the season too. So Arizona does not exactly have an easy run of it this weekend. This weekend is really, really good baseball. So all the playoff teams are playing each other, it feels like, and this is going to be, and then the Padres get the Giants. So you would argue that the Padres have the easiest run of it this weekend, but then you just never know, because again, for whatever reason, San Francisco is just a thorn in their side consistently, no matter who the manager is, no matter what the rosters look like.
And the D-backs have, they're at home against Milwaukee. Then they go to Coors, like, okay, it's Coors Field, who knows? And then they go to Milwaukee for 4. So 7 of their next 10 are against, like you said, the Central leading Brewers. They've been a clear playoff team, it seems like, the entire season. And then they finish at home against the Giants, and then, of course, against the Padres. And so I think, as a whole, the Padres, like going back to like a week or two ago, had one of the more favorable schedules in the National League. I'd have to look that up now for whatever that's worth. But all the while, you're sitting here like, no matter what happens, just knowing what those last 6 games look like, and how much those could end up. I mean, I think the safe bet is like, we probably don't know anything. We might not know much after this weekend. We probably don't know much until those last 6 games of the season, because of the nature of the games that you're playing and the fact that you've got Arizona right there for 3. But as you were discussing in the newsroom, it could also be a situation where like everybody ends up happy one of those nights during that series.
But how great was I? Honestly, Darnay, I haven't looked it up, but I cannot recall a time where if you look at the numbers here, where the Dodgers and the Padres can both clinch the postseason on the same night in the same stadium, where the Dodgers would win the division. Of course, they would already have a wild card spot locked up, but the Dodgers could win the division and the Padres win a wild card against each other in LA, which would mean that everybody's celebrating, even though the Padres technically lost the division, but get a chance to get in the postseason, which would make the celebration a little bit weird. But could you imagine both clubhouses being all taped up and seeing all that on the TV broadcast, and having Don and Mud sitting there talking about, well, everybody gets to throw grain alcohol on everybody's head. This is going to be fantastic. I've never seen that before. I don't know. Maybe it's happened because weird stuff happens in baseball throughout its 100 whatever year history. But that would be a really interesting situation to be in, where the Padres get to celebrate at Dodger Stadium, but so do the Dodgers against the Padres. Like that'd feel a little surreal.
It would feel a little bit surreal, and like the same situation, could happen in Arizona, right? Like say there's a game where the Braves need to win, and they they need to win to stay alive. Obviously, the Padres and D-backs are going to split regardless. Braves lose, and then all of a sudden, like, does that lock up the spot for both those teams in the wild card on the same night? I would imagine, I would imagine that the Diamondbacks get priority over celebrating in the pool. Do both teams get to sprint out through the outfield to the pool? And take a dip. So that's, one of those interesting scenes that we, maybe everybody's happy, and it's like towards the end, like, hey, we're happy for you guys. Good to see you. We'll duke it out in the playoffs. Let's get some beers and hang out by the pool for a little bit.
What would be really weird is if the Diamondbacks and Padres play each other in the first round, and that happens to be in Arizona. So final Towel 3 games of the year in Arizona, just take enough clothing with you for another couple out there. Play the wild card round. That'd be a little bit odd.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of bit odd, and then it just leads to like a lot of really interesting kind of playoff scenarios, just in terms of like how the bracket shakes out. How soon potentially could you face the Dodgers based on like the one or the two? Like from a comfort level standpoint, like you'd rather face the Dodgers than the Phillies, right? Like before, 2022, you'd probably say no, like let's steer clear of the Dodgers. But given how things have gone against Philly, given the history against the Padres from a couple years ago, and the way the season has gone, like sign me. I'm sorry, this might come back to bite me, but like sign me up for LA.
I agree 100%. Yes, no, absolutely. Because for whatever, and we've done the numbers, like the Phillies in San Diego since Petco Park opened are like 47-22 or something like that. Like they have played great baseball at Petco Park. They play really tough against the Padres at Citizens Bank. I was there 2 years ago, and it was just the most raucous baseball atmosphere I think I have. And I've been to World Series games, and I don't recall an atmosphere like that in Philadelphia. It's if you can wait for somebody else try and knock off the Phillies, please do. That would be awesome, because then you take your chance with the Dodgers. You've got the season series against the Dodgers. You knocked them out 2 years ago. You can beat LA. That right now. You're not sure if you can beat Philly.
Yeah. And then, what would be interesting is, if it does come down to that last game or two to decide, if you're looking at those top 2 wild card spots, and those being the teams that play one another in the wild card series, which team gets that top spot and which team gets home? Do you stay at Chase Field, or does everybody caravan to San Diego for a Petco Park series, which I believe is 2 days later, that Tuesday, I think, game 1?
Yeah, 2 days later. And that's what makes this so interesting, Darnay, because now you're talking about, okay, let's say that they are they're both in, right? But they don't, the seeding is not yet set. So it's like, it's a 1 game differentiator with 3 games to play, right? Either way. Mm-hmm. Now, do you try to win that series and get the home field by throwing all your guys? Or do you think, what? It's a wild card series. It's 2 out of 3. Maybe home field doesn't matter as much as lining up our pitching rotation so that we know we have the best chance of winning that series. So you're more or less giving away the option of hosting to make sure you're as strong in the playoffs as you can possibly be. That's a legitimate conversation that Mike Schilt and the guys are going to have. If that scenario plays out. If you go there and you know where your seating is, whatever, then fine, whatever. But if there's a chance that you can either host by going out there and trying to win all those games with your best arms, or lining up so you have the best chance to win, I honestly don't know which way I would go, because the Padres, while they have technically been better on the road this year. You've seen Petco Park in the playoffs, man. It is a different world, especially those 2 games against the Dodgers and the start of the NLCS. I mean, they went 3-1 at Petco Park in the playoffs in 2022. In 2020, they won a wild card series there against the Cardinals. Like this, without anybody in the stands, but there's something different about this place in the postseason. Like that'd be an awfully big carrot to dangle out there, man. Like, we know we can win on the road, but God, how great would it be to do it at home?
Yeah, certainly. And it's kind of like, the type of dilemma that you heard about, I feel like a little bit more in the older playoff format, especially with the 1-game wild card, where teams going into their last game or two would have to decide, okay, do we want our ace to potentially get us in, or do we want to hold our ace to, get us through the wild card into the NLDS? And that's a really interesting dilemma. And, the Padres have had, the arms to, like, if they needed somebody just to, like, all right, we're going to kind of not punt on this game, but sort of punt on this game, like bring somebody up or, mess with the schedule. Martin Perez, you're throwing the finale, whatever it is, to save their guys. The good thing, I think, from the Padres standpoint is now you do have King, you do have Cease, you do have Musgrove, you do have Darvish. So you do have 4 guys for essentially 4 games. If you're looking at, a winner take all season finale, game 162, and then 3 games in the wild card. It's not like much of the season where you didn't have Joe, you didn't have you, and you're like, okay, maybe we have 3, with Matt Waldron, who's no longer with the Major League Club, and Cease and King. It's just a little bit tricky to figure out, like, who's your faith in at this point. Joe, since he's been back, largely phenomenal. And so maybe that answers your question. What do you see from you the next couple weeks? Dylan Cease, like, probably a higher ceiling than everybody, but you just don't necessarily see it from start to start. And Michael King has probably been just kind of the steadiest of the bunch. So I'm glad I'm not the one kind of making that call, because it's certainly not like maybe you feel differently. I feel like it's not a super clear, answer there.
You're right. Although the way the guys have performed, there's no clear answer. The way that the guys have been used in their careers, I think it probably clears things up a little bit. You, Darvish, and Joe Musgrove are starting. End of discussion. Period. Paragraph. Those are your guys. They started your first 2 games of the year. Like, they've been there. They've done that. They're your dudes, right? Especially, I'm telling you what, man, I am so encouraged with what happened with you, Darvish, in the 3rd inning in Seattle. Scuffling a little bit, 2 runners on, and all of a sudden, you, Darvish, showed up. And if that's the guy in his next start and the start after that we see again, then you is back. And we've seen how effective he can be in the postseason. Musgrove look what he did in the wild card against the Mets, man. Look, that guy, he's still the only pitcher in the Padres rotation on the Padres staff who has won a World Series game. He's been there. He's done that. He was great in the postseason before. He's got to be there. After that, I think Dylan Cease, if you have to win 1 game, and it's a game 3 and Dylan Cease is your guy to do it, I feel pretty damn good about that. And then Michael King, I would only put Michael King in the bullpen because he's done it before. He's done it as recently as last year, where he was closing games for the Yankees. So he's got that experience. He knows how to do it. It's a bigger adjustment for a guy who really has never come out of the bullpen consistently to figure out how to do that. Michael King's been there, done that. If, God forbid, something bad does happen to one of the 3 starters, guess what? You got Michael King ready to launch on alert 5, who can go out there and give you 6 innings, and you're okay. So that's where I would put him in that kind of swing type of situation, knowing that, hey, also, guess what? If you do win in 3, you got Michael King ready to start game 1 of the NLDS, and that's not a bad situation to find yourself in.
Yeah, I think between Clevenger and maybe Manaya, it was they got to their number 4 starter twice during that NLCS run. I believe Clevenger pitched the opener against LA, and then he or Manaya, maybe it was a piggyback situation, I can't recall, in Philly the weekend that everything went south. And
everything went to hell. They beat up on, I can't remember the name of the kid who started that game for Philly. They go on and score 3 in the first, and all of a sudden, here comes Clevenger, and it's bam, bam, bam. And here comes Fanaya, and it's bam, bam. You're like, good Lord, how this is never going to end.
Yeah. And you're right. The versatility of King certainly would be an asset once you get to that point. So it's interesting, but they do, a good thing with Joe and you coming back is like, you've got the complement of arms now, whereas for much of the season, that wasn't quite so certain. You're having to rely on Randy Vasquez. You had to hope that Matt Waldron would continue to pitch at an otherworldly level. And that obviously wasn't the case. And then you're dealing with kind of like some inexperience there. How does he handle like a playoff situation? Does he have the feel for the knuckleball when like it's the biggest start of his life and everything's kind of on his shoulders? So we're not in a situation we're having to kind of ask those questions anymore. So that'll be interesting. Lawrence chimed in the chat. Would the Dodgers actually celebrate a division title, or do you have the Padres celebrating but LA knowing and feeling the dread of yet another incoming playoff collapse?
Yes, they would celebrate, because what you try and do is forget about all those playoff collapses and just say, hey, this year is different.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, even if you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, and like I think maybe it's a good thing for the Dodgers that they're not just like running away with the top seed, and that they've had to win some games to hold off the Diamondbacks and hold off the Padres. Because we've discussed how like there's been seasons where they really play no meaningful games the entire regular season because they're so far ahead of everybody by like May or June. And so that'll be interesting. Like obviously this Dodgers team hasn't been quite as overwhelming and maybe got some holes that previous editions haven't had. They still have, huge talents, and so we'll see what that factors in, but they've had to kind of work at it a little bit more down the stretch than they've had in past years. So, hey, maybe they'll have like more of a feeling of accomplishment as a result of that. He also this is a bit of a pivot here. He's also curious thoughts on Campy going down to El Paso, which, I have a tough time saying that's the wrong call at this point.
Yeah, he's not. I don't want to say lost at the plate, but it's just not working. It's not where Kyle Higashioka has seized the number one catcher spot. He's been fantastic. Again, I'm not sure how effective he'd be in an everyday job, but Elias Diaz is right there. I mean, he was the All-Star Game MVP last year. Get that kid out there, get him some at-bats, because he obviously has got talent in that bat somewhere. Can handle himself behind the plate. Again, not as good defensively as Higashioka is, but certainly somebody who can help you win some baseball games. It just wasn't working for Cam. It got off to a fantastic start, and then it just has been progressively downhill ever since. So if he's not going to be a guy who's going to help you out, we saw in 2022, Austin Nola caught every inning. So when you get to the postseason, catcher days off go away. So it's going to be Higashioka and maybe Diaz a little bit more down the stretch, but you certainly don't need 3 catchers as you're getting down to the last 2.5 weeks of the season here.
No, and then, kind of like with that Cronenworth play on Wednesday night, like we're getting to a point where everything matters. All the details matter. And while Luis Campusano has done some great things, Todd and I think last week's episode talked about like a couple moments where a ball he needs to get his chest in front of, he doesn't get his chest in front of, not controlling the running game, that sort of thing. And I think that's an area where Campy's probably still coming along a little bit. And I think he's probably made some strides there, especially the first part of the season. But when there is so much on the line and a single base runner, a single 90 feet, whatever, could be the difference. A framing of a pitch could be the difference. Probably makes sense to rely on the guys that have a bit more experience, a bit more seasoning from that standpoint, and then give them a couple weeks. Higgy doesn't need it, but Diaz like a couple weeks to kind of settle in, be that guy for a little while. So again, like hate it for Campy, because like I think we all like are excited about him, want him to do well, want him to succeed, but it's just been kind of a tough stretch for him.
Yeah, remember, he's 25 years old, too. We've been talking about him for the last 4 years, because you remember he came up in 2020 and had that one home run. But it's like he's 25 years old. He's still got hopefully he's still got a long career ahead of him. And this is just one of those, bumps in the road for him. Because as we know, we say it all the time, the talent is there.
Yeah. No question about that. Anything else? I think, one of the takeaways from the Mariners last 2 games is like Fernando Tatis Jr. doing some very Fernando Tatis Jr.-y things. And for a team that, they obviously needed the spark on Tuesday, flipped the game with one swing, another homer. I think it was only the second time this season he's homered in back-to-back games and took a run away. You saw a platinum glove caliber play against the wall, over the wall against Arozarena. Good signs there as he, was a little bit slow in making his, obviously had the walk off, which was very exciting, but wasn't exactly lighting it up once he got back. And so that's a good thing to see for a team that I think needs the spark. Like Manny's done some good things, got the record. Awesome to see. Jerks and Profire's tailed off. Too soon to make too much over this, but over the last 6 games, Jackson Merrill's 1 for 19, and he's been pretty slump proof. And hopefully
he fouled the ball off his kneecap and busted the heck out of it.
That's true.
He doesn't look the same at the plate. The fact that one hit is a home run is kind of miraculous. He does not look comfortable. He just does not look. He's out there gritting it out.
Yeah.
He's hurt, and he's trying to go out there and give you everything he can. And having Tatis next to him in right field helps defensively. He doesn't have to get to as many balls as he was earlier in the year.
Yeah.
He's dinged up, and I think you really got nobody else you can put out there who can give you. Even Jackson Merrill at 70% is probably better offensively than Tyler Wade, but I mean he's hurt, man. This is one of those. He's dinged up. He's trying to make adjustments. He's trying to get over the fact that he's got a big old gash on his kneecap.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is his drive kneecap. And every time you're swinging, when you're a left-handed hitter, it's your left foot. You are torquing. You're twisting. You're turning that knee into the dirt. That hurts. That you cannot get away from it. So yeah, he's not the same guy right now. Hopefully, he'll be okay with the next couple of weeks. These days off that are built in here are very, very beneficial. I'd say even give him a day off in San Francisco on Friday. Give him let him rest as much as you possibly can, because you're going to need him over the last couple of weeks of the season. But this is not a slump. This is he's fighting through something that's a legitimate injury.
Yeah, and again, all that to say, like, now would be a great time for Fernando Tatis Jr. to click into one of those stretches where he's just playing out of this world baseball. And again, the timing similar to Musgrove, similar to Darvish, the timing working out where those guys are fresh. They're coming into their own at a perfect time where all these guys have been grinding. Merrill's been playing out of his mind. Such an important, a key, like a reason why that the Padres are in the situation that they're in, with Profar struggling a little bit. Like, Tatis being Tatis could do wonders for this team when there's so much riding on every game. And you mentioned Merrill potentially getting a day or days down. I mean, they bring up Brandon Lockridge. So I know there's some excitement about what he could provide. He's had a really good year at the AAA level. Like, what does he do for you? Because
remember, it's the Pacific Coast League.
No, I'm just saying. I'm not saying he's going to be the answer. We understand this, but if you're going to give Merrill,
I'm saying that to all the Padre fans who think he's going to come out and do what he did at El Paso, it's the Pacific Coast League.
But if you're needing to fill a day or so here or there for Jackson Merrill and get some decent at bats out of guys that could potentially come up here and produce, we'll see what he can do. And then there's the Ha-seong Kim situation, and there's Xander Bogaerts situation, making the move back to shortstop, and Ha-seong Kim progressing more slowly than I think the club expected. And then the idea of getting Donovan Solano more at bats, which, I mean, if you're talking about Solano and Ha-seong Kim in the lineup, like, give me Donovan Solano. There's obviously the defensive piece as well. But Bogaerts has shown that he can play a fine shortstop. And so all these just kind of different adjustments and mini storylines to kind of keep an eye on over these next few weeks as they kind of solidify what they've got going in the postseason.
Let me ask you this, because I was talking to Fletch over there at 760 the other day. Ben Fletcher is doing a great job, by the way, in the midday matchup.
Yeah, good job, Fletch.
Yeah, he's doing really well. We're debating this. Okay, if you put Xander Bogaerts back at shortstop, and you leave Donovan Solano at first base, and Jake Cronenworth's playing second base. Even when Ha-seong Kim comes back, obviously Kim is superior defensively to Bogaerts at short. But you're right, Solano's bat is better than Ha-seong Kim's bat. So, which is the greater drop off? Is it the drop off defensively from Bogaerts to Kim, or Kim to Bogaerts, or is it the drop off offensively from Solano to Kim? Which optimizing your lineup both offensively and defensively, which is the better way to go? Leaving Donnie Barrels out there or letting Ha-seong Kim come back and put him at the bottom of the lineup, even though he hasn't had many at-bats, because he's probably going to be better. You're better defensive on the left side, but are you better defensively on the right side with Bogaerts at second and not Ha-seong Kim at second, or Jay Cronenworth being at second base versus first base? Like, what's the best lineup? I honestly can't come up with an answer here.
Yeah, I mean, I think short answer, I find myself being in favor of like, let's keep Solano in the lineup, Cronenworth at second, Bogaerts at short, Kim available, late game defensive substitution. You're up a couple runs going in the 7th, 8th inning, what have you. And so that's, I think, the approach that I would take. I just think right now, again, this is something that could, very easily come back to age poorly. But I feel like you got to get as many quality at-bats in there as possible. And Donovan Solano will do that. We've seen him come through in big spots. And I haven't seen enough from Ha-seong Kim to want his bat in the lineup on a daily basis. Even knowing how good he generally has been defensively, although I will say, rough start to the season for him, and now coming off an injury. Like, if or when he does come around, you have to factor that in as well. How's he feeling if he goes to the ground? How's he feeling making a tough throw? So that's obviously a key factor as well. And so now doing this thought exercise with you, I think I feel even better about my answer, that like, I want Donnie Barrels in the lineup. Like, I want that guy. I want his at-bats. And I think the surrounding pieces defensively are good enough that I'm not too worried, even knowing that like a fluky play can happen like it did Wednesday with Cronenworth on the exchange.
Yeah, so this Cronenworth, that's a fluke. What about Jake is a fluke? He's so good defensive. Don't that kind of stuff happens. It was just kind of a magnified moment.
Yeah.
Solano's approach with 2 strikes is so good. He just makes pitchers. He drives them nuts with the way he just foul ball, ball. But he's got a great eye. He will just grind out in that bat and then flip a little flare over the second baseman's head on pitch 8 for a base hit. And the pitcher's just like going, God, what do I got to do to get this guy out? He really, really works pitchers and works counts. I love his approach at the plate. I would rather have him in there offensively, put him at first base, or he's showing he's very capable, than again, like you said, roll the dice with Ha-seong Kim. So I think we both talked our way into here saying, yeah, you know what they have right now is probably what they should stick with going down the stretch.
Part of it is like the offense has tailed off a little bit. I was just on Baseball Reference looking at their game logs. So far this month, 9 games, so shortish sample size. They're averaging 1 run fewer than they did in the month of August. Their OPS has dropped from, their OPS so far this month is 705, 316 slugging, 380 or 316 on base, 389 slug, compared to the month of August when they were averaging over 5 runs per game with a 337 on base, 441 slug, 778 OPS. And so I'm now at a point where like, all right, they need a little more juice, as much juice as they possibly can have in the lineup and especially with Merrill has an achy knee. Jurickson Profar has trailed off his all-star form. You gotta have, as much as you possibly can in the lineup and they've shown like the ability to jump on teams, to come back. Like they've threatened to do it on a regular basis, and it hasn't always come to fruition. I mean, Sunday being a prime example where they're down 7-1, get to 7-6 at Xander Bogaerts' home run. I want guys, they've had to do that so often, they've had so many close games, like that's who I want in the lineup to give me the best chance, regardless of what the game tells you through the course of the game. Like, you've got the guys who can give you the at-bats, to handle that situation. And Solano has done that in spades.
I'm looking at they face some pretty good pitchers, Kirby, Webb, yada yada. They
sounded like Mike Schilt, Derek.
I know, but what I'm looking at is it almost feels like the Padres, again, I'm talking like it feels preordained for them to get into the postseason. What are the odds that they play the Pirates twice in a week and miss Paul Skeens the entire time? And then they play the Giants twice in a week and they miss Blake Snell the entire time.
They play
and
the Tigers and
they miss Tariq Skubal. Exactly. Like it's like what's going on here? You know, like it's almost like these matchups, they keep on saying, you know what, everything that happened last year and all the bad luck that you guys got, we're going to give it all back to you this year. And if it kind of feels like that's happening, and credit to the Padres, for the most part, they're taking advantage of a lot of that. So again, you got to deal with Logan Webb twice, which is never fun. And they got him again tomorrow or on Friday as we tape this on a Thursday, but he's going against Dylan Cease. And if Cease is getting back into his form, and you heard Mudd talking about it on one of the broadcasts, like they feel like he's getting back to that, but he's not quite there yet. If he clicks in, you're talking about 7 shutout, 7 innings and 1-run ball, whatever it is. You're right there, and you can get after the San Francisco bullpen that has not been nearly as good as the Padres bullpen has been. So it feels like, man, they keep on lucking out with this stuff. You know, they get Clayton Kershaw back, his second start where he's still not Clayton Kershaw. You know, everything just seems to be going their way this year, and maybe that's just kind of baseball evening itself out. Maybe it's the baseball god saying, we got your back this time. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just pure dumb luck, but it feels like that means something to me.
And they don't see Blake Snell this weekend.
Like I said, they don't face him. They don't see him once in 6 games.
Yeah. Yeah, which is interesting. I have a tough time feeling like destiny is completely in favor of the Padres. I don't doubt it, but like you know, maybe I've seen too much, and even in my relatively short 6 seasons around the club, have enough scar tissue to be like, I need to see the check mark or whatever the letter is, a Y or a Z whenever they clinch in the standings. But you're right, like a lot has gone in their favor. I think what does freak me out a little bit is like, you know, the reversal of the fortunes from last year is like all the walk-offs, all the close wins, that sort of thing. Like those have been fun, but they've also been necessary, you know? Yeah. And so what happens if all of a sudden they're losing these close games, if they're on the wrong end of a walk-off? Like that's where I start to get a little bit nervous. I feel like this is a little bit of a reversal from what it usually is. Here, I'm being kind of like the nervous, worried, like borderline pessimistic one. And you're being like, it's fine. It's already written in the stars. They're moving on. We're good. So I don't know what happened here. A Bizarro World edition of the On Fire podcast.
Yeah, maybe it's because I was over at the Aztecs this morning and we're like, yeah, Pac-12, everything is awesome. You know, optimism, woo. But I've been also just kind of looking at this, like, you know, you look at the schedules that all these teams have going down the stretch. The Padres have teams that, aside from the Astros, who are always very, very good, especially this time of year, it's teams they can handle, right? It just kind of shook out that way. Why are they the ones that get, you know, their deli ticket to sweep the White Sox comes in with their last home series of the year when they're in a pennant race? Mm-hmm. That just, it almost feels like, hey, you know what? Good on you. You know, here you go. There are too many things trending in the right direction that for me to go, you know what? Maybe they won't get past the wild card round. Maybe they'll get swept. Who knows? But they just have too much momentum right now to not get in.
Yeah. A big talker, and Todd and I chatted about this last week a bit. You know, it looks like they've kind of more or less like firmed up their lineup for, you know, this stretch. Mm-hmm. But there's been a lot of talk about like, what do you do with Jackson Merrill? And obviously when Tatis got back, that shuffled things a little bit. You move Cronenworth down. You're going, you know, splitting up the lefties with Bogarts hitting 6th. Now Merrill being dinged up, maybe that answers the question a little bit. But did you have any thought at any point of let's move Merrill up and move Cronenworth down? Because Todd and I both kind of settled on like, you know what, like to steal a Derek Togerson line, like the length of the lineup looks really nice with Jackson Merrill, and it's just kind of worked for him. So I don't know if I would mess that up, like knowing that he can kind of handle whatever situation, has nothing to do with that. But we both kind of settled on like, it's kind of good the way that it is. Do you see it any differently?
No, if it ain't broke, don't break it. You know, the lineup looks good. Jake is going to get, you know, he gives you professional at bats. You know, he's really good in big moments and really good in the postseason. As you talked about the close and late stuff, Jake's a really good bat. And remember, as good as Jackson Merrill has been, if good as Jackson Merrill has been, he's still a 21-year-old rookie. So leaving him toward the bottom of the lineup, perfect, fantastic. Does he deserve to be moved up more? Yes. Yes, he does.
Yeah.
But does anyone else deserve to be moved down? Maybe you can make the case for Bogarts. But again, he's a veteran guy who was, rounding himself into shape as well. Plus, as you said, if Jackson Merrill is your number 7 hitter, you're a pitcher. You're a starter. You're getting through. All right. See, you breeze through the first 2 innings. Like, yeah, I got my 7 in. I got the rookie of the years coming up. What the hell is this? And then you got to deal with Donovan Solano, who's one of the toughest at bats out there. And then Kyle Higashioka, who did the greatest offensive season of his life, going back to probably Little League. And then you turn around, there's a Luis Arias lurking again. It's the length that Merrill hitting 7th gives you is stupid. It's stupid. And I guarantee you, he does not care about where he hits in the lineup. Put him lead off, great. Put him 9th, great. He just wants at bats. He just wants to go out there and play. So when you have a guy with that kind of mentality, you don't have to worry about egos. I guarantee you put Fernando Tatis Jr. in there in the 7th hole in the lineup, you've got a problem on your hands because mentally he's going to have issues. Merrill isn't like that. He's going to be like, great, where's my AB? Great. Well, more chance for guys to be on base in front of me. I'll take the RBI. Great. That's just how he approaches the game and life. And there's no reason to move him around because he can handle it. And man, he makes the back end of the back third of that lineup really, really dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has been for a lot of teams in close games. I've been wanting to bring this up, and this is one of those maybe I'm the idiot things.
I feel that way all the time.
And you can tell me. But I've seen something and heard something repeatedly through the season as people discuss kind of playoff races and who's ahead and who's behind and tiebreakers and all that. And every time I hear it, I'm like, that's not how it works. But I've heard it enough that I'm like, okay, maybe I'm the idiot. Where say a team is 3 games up on the other team, but the other, so say the Padres are 3 games up on, I'm trying to think of a team that has say the Mets, and the Mets have the tiebreaker. Okay, just for sake of example. They'll say, well, the Padres are 3 games up, but it's really just 2 games up since they have the tiebreaker.
Right.
Where people are applying the tiebreaker before there's actually a tie. The tiebreaker only comes into play once there's a tie. Right. So if the Mets are
they call it a tiebreaker.
So if the Mets are 3 games back and they only make up 2, then they'll finish on the outside because they're 1 game out.
Yeah, I think what people are doing there is saying mentally, you can't let them catch you. Mentally, you treat it as 2, right? Because if it gets to 3, now you lose.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, they're not talking. I don't think they're talking about the mathematic part of it. They're saying if you let them get that 1 more game, you are now behind them. So I think it's more of a mental way of looking at it.
But it's also not true, because if they only get 2 games, then they accomplish what you say they will accomplish, and they'll still finish on the outside. But you're right. And where it does kind of apply is a situation now with the Braves where the Padres do have the tiebreak over them.
Correct.
Where the Braves are however many games back they are. If it's make sure I get this right. If they are, we'll say around number 2 games back, they need to be 3 games up. So really it's getting 3 games in the Padres. But I've heard that a million times, and now you've made it make sense in my brain, even though I feel like the math doesn't quite math with how people.
Oh no, the math is not mathing there. You're absolutely right. The math, that's not how math works. Numbers are numbers. You still have to get that 3rd game, right? You have to reach that. But what it does in effect is it knocks the Padres down 1 peg because they don't own the tiebreaker. So, yeah, that's it. You really
can't let it get to that point. Yes, certainly.
Yeah, just hey, man. It's it's a dumb way of saying, just don't let them catch you. The math doesn't add up. But what you're really just trying to say is, hey, man, you've got a 3-game lead, but it's really just like 2 3/4 game lead, because if they get all the way there, then you're behind them because you lost the season series to them. You know, it's just. Yeah, there are probably a lot better ways of putting it that I can't come up with right now, but that's the thing.
I think it's simple. They're 3 games back and they have the tiebreaker. So don't let them get
exactly. So if they get to 3, guess what? You're now 4.
Because by saying, oh, well, it was really just 2 games, I'm like, well, wait a second. They've really adjusted the tiebreaker rules in Major League Baseball and made it so if you are in striking distance with the tiebreaker comes into play and you flip the other team. Fortunately, we haven't. Rob Manfred hasn't gone that far yet, unfortunately.
No, but I wouldn't put it past him, honestly.
Rafa says emergency pod if the Padres lose the first 2 to the White Sox. Lauren says it will be a R-rated emergency podcast if that were to happen.
Oh yeah, we will have the FCC right on our tails because we'll come in here on a Sunday right before the game and just be like those beep.
A lot of bibbity beeps. Of bibbity beeps. So let's see. We got the Giants.
Oh, by the way, are they going to miss Crochet in that series? That'd be another thing. What I was saying earlier.
Oh, it's a good question. If they do, that's how you'll know destiny is really on their side.
Correct.
Giants this weekend, back home for the final homestand of the year, beginning with Houston, day off Thursday, and then the Red Sox series, which hopefully will not necessitate an emergency podcast. But we will definitely be with you next Thursday to wrap up the Astros and head into the weekend against the White Sox. And then, I mean, we pretty much have to do a podcast Monday, the 23rd, day off ahead of Dodgers Diamondbacks, I would think. And so a lot to discuss, a lot left to sort out, and we will see what effect this weekend with all its compelling series has on the wild card race. So fun few days ahead. Derek Togerson, excited about it.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to watch. I'll be on the MLB app a lot this weekend.
This is like prime scoreboard watching season. We've waded into those waters the last couple weeks, but this is like this weekend. It's going to be all about it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Best of luck to the Pods this weekend. Hopefully they take care of business. And do we close out this podcast by saying something we have never said and may never say again on this?
You're not going to make me do it. Don't make me do it, Darnay.
I'm not saying we have to do it, but I see people are let's not do it. Let's not do it. Okay. We'll quietly think it to ourselves, but we won't go. That might be a bridge too far.
Okay, we can't say go Dodgers. We can't do that. What we can say is
don't go Braves.
Best of luck to the guys in blue up to 5. Can we say that?
Hope everybody works hard, has fun, stays injury free, and has.
How about hey, Dave Roberts, San Diego native, we're rooting for you, buddy.
Go enjoy yourself, guy.
Go get him, slugger.
See you next time.